I'm Patricia, and this is Investigating Vegan Life with Patricia Kathleen. This series features interviews and conversations I conduct with experts from food and fashion to tech and agriculture, from medicine and science to health and humanitarian arenas. Our inquiry is an effort to examine the variety of industries and lifestyle tenets in the world of vegan life. To that end, we will cover topics that have revealed themselves as common and integral when exploring veganism. The dialogue captured here is part of our ongoing effort to host transparent and honest rhetoric for those of you who, like myself, find great value in hearing the expertise and opinions of individuals who have dedicated their work and lives to their ideals. You can find information about myself and my podcast at patriciakathleen.com. Welcome to Investigating Vegan Life. Now let's start the conversation. Everyone, and welcome back. I am your host, Patricia, and today I'm so excited to be sitting down with Janani Kumar. She is a plant-based recipe developer and blogger. You can find out more on both of her websites, myveggihacks.com as well as myplantmood.com. Welcome, Janani.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. And for those of you listening, I will proffer a quick roadmap of the inquiry for today's podcast, and then I will read a bio on Janani before we get started so everyone has a good basis of who we are talking to today. The roadmap will begin with looking at Janani's education, professional, and experience, as well as her personal story with vegan life, all of those things. I'll ask her then to unpack her blog, My Veggie Hacks. Ask her to look at terms as a vegan that we all use, but I think are individually defined differently. And we'll also look at myplantmood.com and what the work that she's doing there. And then we'll look at some of the particulars about recipe curation, how she decides what goes on to each of those sites, and we'll unpack the course that she offers on myplantmood.com and other things like that. And then we'll wrap everything up with rapid fire questions. These are based on questions that our audience has written in, asking that we ask some of the experts in the field and the guests that we are bringing on regarding vegan life and your inquiries within that. As promised, a quick bio on Janani before I start peppering her with questions. Janani is a plant-based recipe developer and lifestyle coach at the Vegetarian Carnivore. Her mission is to inspire people to transition to a lifestyle that is compassionate towards all animals, the environment, and their own health. She emphasizes creating comfort food recipes, many of which are vegan recreations of traditionally non-vegan comfort foods. Janani enjoys nerding out over nutrition facts and binge watching puppy videos in her spare time. You and me both, Janani. Nothing short of mandatory for my wellness and health. That's hysterical. So before we kind of unpack your two different sites and the endeavors and the work that you do within that, I'm hoping you can draw out a quick educational and professional background and experience, as well as your personal story as it kind of interrelates. I know that you draw this out really well on myveggihacks.com. You've got a great bio. Can you kind of enumerate on it for everyone listening today?
Yeah, so I was actually raised vegetarian from birth. I was born into a vegetarian household, traditional Indian vegetarian, and I really never questioned it. It was kind of just a given that I would say no to the hot dogs at school or the burgers at recess, and I never really questioned it. And it really wasn't until I got to college and I was studying, I studied engineering. I have an engineering background. And as I was doing research into engineering and I was understanding, well, why does this happen? Well, why does that happen? And I was really getting stuck down into like really, really the basics. I started to apply that into my personal life, into my food choices. And I really started to become more interested in finding out where my food came from and really the supply chain, if you will, for it to, get into the grocery store and then get on my plate. And that was really where I learned that the compassion diet in this country was really not all as compassionate as I could be, because I learned about the dairy industry and I learned about the egg industry. And that was something that was incredibly difficult for me to stomach, because I was a cheese addict. Like I would be eating cheese every single day, and I didn't know the impact of that, of the dairy industry. And so the college was really the pivoting point for me, because college was where I had a lot of friends, go from being a vegetarian to seeing, oh, well, I'm away from family, so I'm just going to start not being vegetarian. Or I saw people going the other way, saying, okay, well, this is my chance to actually make a change to my life that I might have not been able to make when I was living with my parents. And so for me, I went the other way, and I said, I am going to start, eating more plant-based food, and I'm going to start really understanding, my impact, and, understanding the impact that my choices are making on the world and the welfare of animals and my own health. And actually, when I started cutting out dairy and eggs, honestly, I started feeling so much better. My bloat went away, and I started having so much more energy, and that was something that I was not expecting, because something that the media keeps pushing on us is that, you need eggs, you need dairy to be a strong person, and to have strong bones, and all this stuff. So I was getting all these um, um, I was getting all these results that were so contradictory to what we have been taught. And so that just made me go deeper down. That's when I started the Vegetarian Carnivore. It started out as a vegetarian blog. And since then, I have had a slow transition to veganism, where I've been cutting out dairy, until one day I was, I didn't eat any dairy at all. And so that was probably the biggest the biggest thing that I've done in my life is to understand that this transition is it's not what you see on social media, that you have to do it all in one day, or that you have to do it, in a very certain way. And you can take it at your own step. And that's really what I did. I'm very glad that I did it. And so, because of my engineering background, everything that I read and I believe, and that I teach and that I share with my audience, has to be rooted in data. I do not believe in supporting, I do not believe in presenting any kind of claim without showing like a randomized, some piece of scientific peer-reviewed journal that kind of backs it up, because there's so much garbage on the internet, and it's so easy to become a statistic like that. So yeah, that's a little bit about my thought process, and how I think about and how I think about my journey into where I am today.
It's interesting because when I hit, my veggihacks.com, I think that there is sometimes a disconnect between generations. And at least when I started out, veganism, it felt like you needed to be a chef.
Mm.
The advent of the industry itself, in the vegan culture, and plant-based foods in general, but also vegan foods and things like that, are starting to really take over by storm over the past 5 years. But also the voice of it, it was this very esoteric industry. And if you didn't come from a culinary place and you didn't know what like agar was, you were just up a creek. And now, especially with what your blog and things like that really exemplify for me, is it's this voice of the young, of the young vegan. Your mac and cheese recipes, you incorporate, store-bought cheeses, in with it. It's not making your own from scratch. And I think that kind of brings in this younger, maybe college-based individual who is, entertaining the vegan lifestyle, and doesn't want to be immediately taught that, you can make a cheese out of coconut oil, but rather just that there's one out there that you can make great mac and cheese substitute, or, all of those things that we all kind of care about, in addition to going to restaurants that serve those things, in a vegan nature as well. So I think you do really well at kind of exemplifying this younger voice and this next generation of vegans coming up. And I love that. I'm wondering, before we get into unpacking each, my veggie hacks as well as my plantmood.com, if you can kind of suss out a couple of terms for us. I'd like to know how you define vegan, as well as plant-based, and if they are different or similar, how they connect to one another.
Sure, and that's a great question. So I think the general consensus amongst the community, the general community, is something that I don't agree with. They kind of lump vegan and plant-based as the same thing, and I don't necessarily agree with that, because for me, veganism is more of a lifestyle where it doesn't just extend to your food choices. It extends to cruelty-free hair care, or makeup, or choosing ethically sourced clothing. And so to me, that's what veganism is. But plant-based is where you focus more on your food choices, and where you focus on more whole foods in a plant-based diet. So that's not exclusively only plants, but for the majority part, it is. And so I would definitely put myself in the category as both vegan and plant-based, because there is such a term as a junk food vegan. And as much as I love vegan junk food, I love it. Those Magnum vegan ice cream bars are, you know, they're my kryptonite. But I do really emphasize the importance of eating, whole foods, plant-based, for optimal diet, because you can't just sit around and eat, I don't know, chips all day, even though they're vegan, and expect to achieve good health. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And then how do you define whole foods? That's another term that you dropped. What do you mean when you say that?
when I say whole foods, I mean fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, grains. I eat a lot of farro, um, bulgur, brown rice, quinoa. And I think those are such nutrition powerhouses that we don't necessarily see. Really, the only grain that I think in Western culture we have heard of is rice, brown rice, and now quinoa. But the idea of like amaranth and buckwheat and millet is still making its way up.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Okay, let's get into some of your sites. I first want to start with myveggiehacks.com. When was it launched, and what is the main goal of that site?
So I launched myveggiehacks.com when I was a senior in college. So that was in 2018. 2018. And and it was with the sole purpose of showing people that you could have really delicious and nutritious meatless meals. The name, the Vegetarian Carnivore, it's kind of a shocking juxtaposition. That really came from like a defiance. I had just had it with people telling me that I couldn't eat good food, that I was missing out somehow, and I just wasn't having it. I didn't want to hear that. And so when they said, I can't have chicken, I can't have bolognese, I can't have all this stuff, I just decided that there had to be a way to do it without hurting the animal, to do it without hurting our bodies, and to do it without, emitting tons of methane into the atmosphere. So I realized that there had to be a way. So that I really started the Vegetarian Carnivore with that intention.
And you still have the Instagram account out, right? You still have on Instagram, it's the Vegetarian Carnivore.
Yes.
Okay, for everyone listening, there's the kind of connection there. There's a few different labels we're throwing around. I want to read from your website something that kind of reached my team and I. It said, one of my goals here is to create a platform for people to read and experiment with my recipes in a way that gives them the opportunity to have more than one measly option on a restaurant menu. I want to encourage people to incorporate more vegetarian meals into their diet, to give it a chance. I want us to leave a smaller carbon footprint on this planet and move toward a more sustainable future. And I think it's interesting because, a lot of vegans, and rightfully so, to their own degree, just, they do not communicate with non-vegan environments. They want to push people into veganism and whole vegans. But you have this kind of meatless Monday approach in this rhetoric right here of yours, where you're like, just give it a shot, start incorporating some of these things into your diet. And because you have a reach into the younger audience, I think it is interesting saying, look at some of these meatless alternatives, like what you were saying before. Have a look at, doesn't always have to be this. And I do think a lot of people resonate, people with any dietary restrictions, that there might be something on the menu for you, but it's one, and you'd better like whatever it is they made vegan, because there's not,
Oh, yeah.
and I like your site for that reason. My Veggie Hacks does do this example of saying it's like a plethora of things, like you were just saying. It's everything from comfort food to, these other aspects. People think of vegan, if they're not vegan, tend to think of salad, or pasta, and that's it. And I think you do a really good job of kind of showing people that. I want to switch now to Myplantmoodcom. What do you do with that? And can you tell us a little bit about the course?
Yeah, so myplantmood.com is a website, predominantly for hosting my course, which I launched actually this last week. My course is a plant-based transition course. It is where I teach about, well, I guess I'll tell you where it came from first. It was born out of this gap in the industry that I saw about, are you vegan or are you not? Are you, it's like, are you this or are you that? And I realized that is the single most daunting thing for someone who is looking for a change, but it's like you can't ask someone to just uproot their everything that they have grown up with all at once. And that is a very scary thing. I'll speak for myself from experience. And so, I grew up in a traditional Indian household. So even though we didn't eat meat, we ate a lot of dairy. So that goes for milk and butter and ghee and cheese and just all of our stuff is just absolutely slathered with butter and milk. And and yogurt, how could I forget that was literally my kryptonite. Yogurt rice was like a staple South Indian comfort food. It's like our chicken soup for the soul. And so for me, when I decided to go vegan, I realized that I couldn't say, okay, today I eat yogurt, tomorrow I don't. I realized I had to create a sustainable transition, but there was no support community for that. There was no, people on the internet, they're so polarized. You're either, a vegan who is totally like going to die of protein deficiency, or you are a hardcore carnivore that doesn't believe in eating plants. So there was no nice middle ground, and I really wanted to help people understand that there is a middle ground, and that every um, choice that you make should be a deliberate choice, and it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. I think that is what really resonates with my own audience, is that it's not an all or nothing thing. You don't have to do that. And so I decided to create this course as an introduction to plant-based nutrition, and as a way to help people transition into eating more plants, and meet them to achieve whatever goal that they want to achieve, whether they want to become vegan or whether they just want to, improve their life and lessen their impact on this world by eating more plants. So that is what this course is intended to do. It's intended on focusing on basics of plant-based nutrition, as well as my tips for eating outside, so you don't just have that one lame option on the menu, as well as like some mindset shifts. A lot of people say, well, I tried going vegan and I fell off the bandwagon, and now I'm just eating like 10 steaks a day, and it's kind of like, it's not a one or the other thing. You can fall off the bandwagon. It happens. We're all just human, right? But what's more important is to recognize that it's okay and to get on track again.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. How long is each course? How is it set up? What are the particulars? How would someone get on and learn more about it?
Yeah, so there's one course currently. I just launched it, and it's an hour and a half long, and you can sign up through my website. myplantmood.com. And there are some really cool bonus resources that I've included as well. I've included my personal grocery shopping list so that I don't forget anything at the grocery store. It really sucks to go to the grocery store with no list and then come back and realize that, oh, I left out the maple syrup, or oh, I left out like literally the main ingredient and you don't have something left. So I've included that. And I've also included my favorite vegan junk food treat sheet. Um, and I think it's really important to do that because a lot of people think of veganism as restrictive. And vegans still eat burgers, vegans still eat ice cream, vegans still eat, we
Yeah.
still eat a lot of this stuff. And I think that a treat day shouldn't compromise on ethics. It shouldn't compromise on taste. And so that's the reason that I've included a vegan treat sheet.
Is that the same thing as your plant-based alternative checklist, or is that completely different?
My plant-based alternative checklist is, oh gosh, I can't remember how I named them right now.
Wondering, feels like it would be like a dairy alternative. Like you mentioned a lot of what cooking with like Daya and different kinds of cheeses that melt, that have these great different flavors and things. And I felt
Right.
it would be an introduction into that. And along that same line, I kind of wonder, do you feel like there will be a maturation with your, as you start to garner more of a community and an audience than you already have? Do you think that you'll start getting into, vegans who want more than just this store-bought substitute? There's a huge line of vegans, but a lot of those cheeses, as magnificent as they taste, and don't get me started on like the smoked gouda and stuff like that they've really nailed, but
Oh yeah.
that don't want to deal with a lot of the ingredients that are in there, some of the vegetable oils that people don't sign off on. There's a huge body of work. I won't get into it about, the difference between canola versus olive oil for one's body. And I'm wondering if you will ever think that you'll take on or endeavor to kind of unpack from a culinary standpoint how to make your own cheese or how to get this or get that, or do you think you'll kind of just stay with this shopping substitution, that type of a slant with it?
So that's a great question. And so the primary reason that I use store-bought cheeses in my recipes is to show people that it's not all that different from what they're already doing. So if you go to the grocery store and you buy dairy cheddar, there is a way that you can go to the store and buy plant-based cheddar. So it's that comes out of a desire on my part to demonstrate to people that it doesn't have to be this complicated, long, winding method to getting your mac and cheese. You can get your mac and cheese, and that's not a problem.
Yeah.
But I have experimented to a really nice extent with vegan cashew cheeses and my vegan spinach artichoke dip, which is on my website, actually does use cashew cheese that I made from scratch at home.
Hmm.
And I think that veganism should be accessible to people who there are some vegans that I know who never set foot in the kitchen. They don't like cooking, they don't care about cooking, and minimum work is the best for them. But for someone like me, who I thrive in the kitchen, I love being in the kitchen, and I just with the agar agar and the the cashews and all that good stuff. And so yes, there is definitely a lot of scope for um, developing out more of the artisanal cheeses, if you will, and the artisanal
Well,
substitutes.
and to that end, how do you curate which recipes you go up with? Is it kind of self-led and self-designed, or do you take a note from your Facebook groups or people who are looking for more translations? How do you decide which recipes you're going to throw up and which recipes you're not?
Both, actually. So I always love getting feedback from my followers, from my viewers, and to that extent, I love creating comfort food, like we've mentioned before. But when I get a recipe request for, can you recreate this as a comfort food, for me, that really hits a really special place for me, and then I will pretty much go out of my way to make it, because I believe that everyone should be. It kind of goes back to the curd rice example, the yogurt rice that I was talking about earlier. For me, that was literally the biggest achievement in my life when I was able to make that vegan, and that was really the push off point for me to say, whew, I am I'm able to fully not eat any animal products now.
Yeah.
And so yes,
To that.
so for that, and to that end, so I do like getting examples from people,
Sorry.
and also I'm sorry, there might be a little lag in the connection.
Yeah. No, it's great. I was just pointing out that you kind of enumerate, you fully elaborate in your on your blog about that yogurt, revolution, and kind of the shout out to anyone of of Southeast, like the Indian descent of, like, it's did it, like the yogurts here, which it's true. Every culture has their, like, break of, like, I think the Impossible Burger in the States, if Americans are attached to burgers, which my America isn't, but let's just say it is, the Impossible Burger and things that we're really creating this, like, you cannot differentiate the moment and you really experience still that same culture. It really broke that barrier for people, which it sounds like your yogurt did for you. So I love.
Mhm.
I'm wondering how we're into our rapid fire questions moment now, because we're kind of peeling out of time here, Janani. And I'm going to ask you just a quick few questions. And this is for everyone who's listening. This is a segment that we kind of added in because we have so many people writing in, and we love our audience, and we want to honor you and your inquiries with everything. So those of you that wrote in that asked us to kind of posture questions to plant-based recipe developers and bloggers, here we go. Where do you see the vegan food scene in the USA headed in the next 3 years, or California in particular?
I'm actually very, very positive about the vegan food scene expansion. I follow a lot of, I follow veg news, and I follow Live Kindly, and I follow a lot of these vegan news outlets on social media. And it seems like every other day they're coming out with a new pop-up, or a new advent, or a new invention. And also, I think that if coronavirus has done nothing else, it has really alerted people to the dangers, to not only the dangers of eating animal products, but also to the benefits of shifting to plant-based. And because of this, vegan sales have skyrocketed across the world, and I feel very very positive about it.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. What are the top three things you wish people just starting off cooking vegan recipes would know?
Okay, right. I think the most important thing to do is to incorporate as much color as you can into your diet, right? So if you go to the farmer's market, you go to the grocery store, try to find something in every color: red bell pepper, um, beetroot, broccoli, kale, something in every color, and then just try to saute it together. Try to experiment with it. And I mean, really, what's the worst that can happen? It turns out botched, but really, that's the most important thing, I think, in my thing. The second most important thing would be to don't be so hard on yourself, right? So don't be so hard on yourself, even if you're cutting out meat from one recipe, but really want to use butter. Fine, go ahead and use the butter. It's, like I said, it's not an all or nothing thing. It is about taking the small steps. And the third most important thing would be find some inspiration. Definitely think back on the recipes that you like. Think back on what made you feel happy and warm and fuzzy on the inside when you were little, and experiment. I mean, there's mushrooms for meat. You can make chicken tenders out of oyster mushrooms. You can use soy crumbles as a beef substitute. You can use seitan as a chicken substitute. And while some of these are getting um, into a little bit more advanced, I would say, style, definitely look to get enough calories. Getting enough calories is so important, and people who are trying to restrict themselves will always feel hungry on a vegan diet or even an omnivorous diet. So get enough calories.
Nice. Yeah. All right. And the final one is, what are your go-tos for getting vegan inspiration and knowledge for cooking?
Ah, vegan inspiration and knowledge for cooking. Google, 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 Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll tell you something I'm going through right now, actually. I'm not much of a baker. I'm just venturing out into baking. And so while I'm pretty well versed in the cooking world, the baking world is kind of like um, crazy. So when I discovered applesauce as an egg substitute, that was kind of like an aha moment, like I can make cookies now, you know? So it it's not always what you think, and so some of my other go-to inspirations are just looking at cooking videos. It doesn't even have to be vegan cooking videos. I look at a lot of cooking videos, and then I think of stuff that I can substitute instead of the meat. So maybe beans instead of beef, or lentils, or whole grains or something. But it doesn't have to be even like a vegan video. So don't limit yourself by only looking at vegan stuff. Look at everything and then see where you can substitute something out. Just put a different source of protein, put a different source of put nutritional yeast instead of Parmesan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love to mix nutritional yeast with hemp hearts. It's got
Ooh.
a like Parmesianic moment to it as well. And also going on off your tandem, just a quick like side note is chia seeds and a tablespoon of water. Ground chia seeds is a great substitute for an egg,
Oh yes.
which I love. And I love applesauce. I love doing both of those because the applesauce cuts out half the sugar, right? Getting healthier.
Yes. Absolutely.
Those things really do.
And the chia seeds add like the omega-3s too, and they're filling. They're filling. Like I put them into cookies actually last week, and I had one cookie, and I was like, "Ooh, I don't feel like having a second cookie." So that kind of cut down that craving.
Yeah, I won't make any baked goods without throwing in flax and chia seed. I won't, just because it's such an
Okay.
easy way to deliver your omega 3s, and they are so righteous for you. And the studies being done on them, vegans and non vegans alike, is just, it's their tantamount to not having them in one's diet. Well, Janani, we are out of time, and I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate like all of you're so expansive. You have so many different areas you go into, and I really do appreciate you kind of like drawing out each point of what you're doing. Hopefully, we can bring you back around after another year or so and find out where all of your endeavors with My Plant Mood and maybe other courses that you have moving forward have kind of ended up.
I would love that. Yeah, it's been great to be here.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, we've been speaking with Janani Kumar. She's a plant-based recipe developer and blogger. You can find out more on both of her websites, myveggiehacks.com as well as myplantmood.com. And until we speak again next time, thank you so much for giving us your time. And remember to stay safe, eat responsibly and clean, and always bet on yourself. Slancha.